Welcome to SAs and IPAs, presented by CDI Studios.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Another episode of SAs and IPAs. I am Michael Colonno, the AVP of Data Center Solutions here at CDI. I am joined by a different guest host, which is
Rob Owen.
What do you do here?
What do I do here? I'm Chief Architect and Executive Vice President of Sales Operations at CDI. So member of the executive team, but also happy to be here and representing the SA team, which is where my roots are laid deep at CDI.
Thank you for taking the time out of your executive day and not sending maybe an assistant or a...
well, didn't you have Kyle on the last episode?
Yes. Very nice. It was the last episode. It was his birthday. And by the time this is aired, it will have been your birthday.
It will have been my birthday, which is coming up very soon, yes.
Very nice.
Getting very old.
We have a guest. Who are you, guest?
My name is Greg Bennett. I'm a senior solutions architect, reporting to none other than Michael Colonno at CDI. Pleasure to be here, guys. Thanks for inviting me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It is a pleasure to be on the show, isn't it?
Huge pleasure, honestly.
I mean, it's kind of like it's almost like a KPI probably of if you're going to get a raise or whatever of
I don't know if I can go that far, but
is that why I haven't got one at the video?
Yeah.
Exactly. So thanks for coming on. Greg, for those of you watching, Greg was familiar with CDI before he came on, and just like Colleen, he was not a acquired entity, or he wasn't someone that was one of the original kind of like people, 12 or whatever the heck we were, beforehand. So tell us kind of how you got to CDI. Why are you here?
So why I'm here? So you're right. I'm legacy CDI, I guess, as they call it. I wasn't part of all the acquisitions that we did over the past year. I met you when I was at Nutanix. I was with one of the vendors, and it was then when I realized that CDI was probably the only partner that actually helped me and actually did something. I'm not even joking.
Shocking.
It was a funny one though, because like Greg, I think was there for he basically came out of training and went right to that meeting, and it was for Century 21. May they rest in peace. I miss those guys because they were all great. Like personally, I miss actually working with them. But it was just funny because Greg was right out of training, and I always kept on saying, well, you could also do this, and Greg's like, these guys they actually know what they're talking about.
Wow.
He actually provided some value. So
you left Nutanix, and where did you go?
Left Nutanix, but before that too, though, I met Kyle too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. That's right.
Take Two Interactive.
Yes.
Is when I first met him.
Yeah.
I first met Corey. So I knew the CDI folks. Always great reps, always great SAs. Really, honestly, the ones that only did something to help me. So left Nutanix, went to Rubrik for a solid 3 years, kept kind of the ties with you and everybody else. There was just a shift at Rubrik, so decided to come back to the partner side, and CDI was the only place to go.
And it's a joke that I always like to make is if anybody's looking, you're a hyper-converged type of appliance, Greg will just probably work at any of you anyway. So if you're looking for anybody.
Absolutely.
No.
We're keeping Greg.
We are keeping Greg. But I will ask you the question, because we're starting when you were a solutions architect, right? So the question I ask everybody is, with booze, everybody has that booze they never will look at, smell, talk about because something happened. It wasn't just because, I didn't really, on the last episode, it was rum for Colleen. There's a reason. There's got to be a reason why you became an SA you were really on the client side for a while, right?
Yes and no, but
so tell us that story, but also what's the booze that you won't, you smell it and you're probably
there's so many,
have nightmares.
There's so many.
Back to college, it was tequila, but no. So going from the client side and coming to CDI, so I was on with another VAR, the very small VAR at Denver. Okay. I was basically staff log, so they put me on different companies, and whatever they needed to get done, I did.
Oh, okay.
So I was out there actually. I didn't realize that, like Colleen said, I was out there selling my company because of just being in front of the customer, showing what we could do. And then went to the Nutanix side and Rubrik side, and then came back.
Was there a defining moment? Was there a project where there was something they asked you to deliver on or talk about, and you were like, I got an hour to learn whatever this is. Like, was there something like that? And if it wasn't, that's fine.
We call it just-in-time learning, right?
Yeah.
Just-in-time learning.
No, you mean when I was at the other
before you moved to the Nutanix.
No, well, there was something that happened. It was honestly just the management that came in, and it was just a bad turned into kind of like a bad culture. So it was just kind of like the writing's on the wall, and maybe make a hop. So, but I was selling Nutanix.
Culture eats strategy for breakfast, right?
Yeah.
That's the tagline around here.
So something both those companies, there's a distinction, and we though your title of seniority and all those things might not matter in terms of your skill set, your job is dictated sometimes by the two letters SA, SE, whatever those things are, right? So you were a solutions engineer at both of those companies. Rob's done a very good job, and Kyle, I hopefully myself, in terms of reinforcing, we are architects, right? Yep. So we're not really hands-on keys necessarily. I know you love to gravitate there. We'll get to that probably. But how has that transition been for you? You still like to dabble there, and it's honestly some of the value that I will say we begrudgingly love, because you show great value there, but at the same time, like, how do you like it that it's a choice as opposed to a job expectation?
There's a very big difference between an SE and an SA. So I'm a sales engineer at both of those places, and you're selling one product.
Sure.
You sell that one thing. You need to know the product inside and out to be able to sell it to a customer. Becoming a solutions architect, it's everything in the data center now. It's not just your compute and your storage or whatever it is. It's networking, it's firewalls, it's cloud, it's everything. So there's a big difference between the two. I do love to get in the weeds still, just because if I'm going to try to provide a solution for a customer, I need to know that it's going to work in their environment. It's going to be the right thing for them. So I'd like to just to make sure that I'm giving or delivering the right solution for a customer. I need to know how it's going to work. And I need to have. I can't read manuals and say, on paper it sounds good, but here, let me show you how it actually works. And
I think one of the things that you did, Greg, when you came over here that really stood out to me was, you obviously made that transition pretty well to a wider skill set, which we kind of knew you were going to do. But then you kind of looked at holistically what we were doing as an organization. And I think for some of us, like, I've been here 13 years. Kyle's been here longer than me. You've been here probably 10 plus, right? So at this point, we kind of get this CDI-ness to us where we think this is it, right? This is the world that we live in. And you came in and you were like, all right, you guys have some pretty good process here and some good onboarding tactics and things like that. But you were able to kind of like really grasp onto that and really immediately make it better, which gave you an identity within the team immediately.
I didn't think about that.
Well beyond your technical expertise, right? Which is something I'm always looking at beyond just, all right, is this person the smartest person in the room? That's always a nice to have, right?
Sure.
But I think to become a more well-rounded individual in the SA land, there's this concept of leadership, and it's not just necessarily like managerial leadership, right? Yeah. There's this concept of I want to make the team around me better, and that's how you've progressed yourself here, right? You've become, really, really great at taking younger individuals, helping us onboard them into the system, whether they're coming from inorganic growth, which we've had a bunch of. We've also had even more organic growth, and bringing people in from the outside. You have this different perspective, right? Which is like, I've been an SE, I've been on a smaller side on the quote unquote VAR side of the house, but how do I really become an architect at a true integrator, and how do we accelerate the timeline of people we bring in from whatever the source is to be effective within the ecosystem? And you helped us develop a lot of that intellectual property, which I think is awesome.
Well, let me ask you a question. Did we ask him to do that?
We did not.
So that goes back to one of our core kind of things. And this is one of the things that, CDI or not, this is one of our recommendations kind of in life, right? Is act as if. You should be, just like people say, dress for the position you want. On the last episode, we talked about that might not be as important anymore, but act as if is very important, whether it's home life, job life, whatever. Is we never add to that very good description of not just how we do things, but also like you stepped in and immediately saw some gaps, right? And if I'm PC, it's going to be areas of opportunity. And you were immediately like, hey, do you mind if I own this? Like, because I could do this. And we're just like, sure, let's see what it is. And you put together a lot of different documentation for that onboarding. But now
it's literally our onboarding package has your fingerprints all over it.
And
it's funny
we've
because
expanded it.
Yeah, and that whole act as if concept and idea has really evolved over time, right? Because it used to be like dress for the job that you want, right? Like show up and look like an executive if you want to be an executive. Well, what is an executive now, right? If you had told me 5 years ago I was going to show up on a public podcast that anyone could watch and I was going to be wearing a t-shirt and jeans, I would have told you were crazy. Like there's no way I would ever have done that, right? So the world has evolved, and I think in a very good way in the sense where, you know, translating the kind of physical appearance into like the actual like output. You know, the output of what you're going to do, or the metamorphosis of who you want to be as a leader is more important than what you look like, right? And I think the whole world has trended in that direction, where it's not about you know, wearing a $3,000 suit to an interview anymore. It's what are you going to bring to the table?
Did you ever have $3,000?
No, but I mean, you get my point.
I'm just joking.
Right? And I think that's what people thought, though, and then they even thought when it was dress the way you want to be perceived, it was like, well, I can't wear $100, you know, cheap suit from TJ Maxx. I got to go buy a really nice suit, right? And that's where, you know, the 3,000 comes from. But I've never owned a $3,000 suit either.
I don't.
Maybe $1,000.
I don't think I ever will.
No. I don't. I have a whole closet in my guest bedroom at my house full of suits that I used to wear that I'll probably never ever wear again.
I know. I had a wedding. And I literally had to dust off the shoulders. And I was like, this is nuts. This is crazy. Thankfully it fit, you know, but that's, you know, it's always a chance. But I mean, and I'm glad you're kind of going this direction because, you know, Greg has kind of taken on a leadership position, not necessarily, you know, even hierarchically. But, you know, you just stepped into that, so as someone that did that, how do you suggest wherever they are, whether they're CDI or otherwise, how do you do that? Like, how did you, like, is that just inherently who you are? Like, or is that something that you've taken on? Like, do you actually stop and said, like, I just want to make people better, like whatever that is?
So I think I do like think that, but never consciously, right?
Okay.
So from when coming on board here, it was easy for me to do it because I see why it was never developed and was never done, because I now see how busy the SAs are. Like
the speed.
There's zero time for anybody to do it. So I came in, no accounts, no title. I was like, look, there's got to be a better way. Like, let me take ownership of this and do it. So it wasn't really intentional. I felt like in not only for me, but just for like for others, it just make it easier. But I think I tend to do that wherever I go, right? So when I was at Nutanix, it goes back to me being on the keyboard. Like I would, if I'm selling VDI to somebody, you know, Citrix at Nutanix, I'd build out that lab and show them how to make it work and what it's going to do, how it's going to perform, and all that kind of stuff. So I did it at Rubrik too, just same type of thing, just getting like hands-on and showing and just knowing the stuff inside and out versus just, hey, look, this is what you learned in new hire training. This is the stuff that we did. Like just knowing it. And then people just would always look to me like, hey, how'd you do that? Or what, you know, you did this before in your lab. How do you?
So you were acting as if technologically you were saying, I'm the customer. What do I want to see?
100%.
What is it that like would be a important outcome and solution and benefit to them? So you were already doing that on the technology side, so you just kind of did that organizationally.
Yeah.
Okay.
I also think that there's like another layer to this, which is kind of the company, you know, culture, right? So you talked about, you know, leaving a company because of not so great or maybe even slightly toxic culture, right? The best company cultures are where they enable this type of behavior. Right? Yep. It's not like, well, you have to wait until you get this title or this promotion or this, you know, this moniker associated with you before you can go and do these things. Otherwise, no one's going to pay attention to you. No one's going to enable the work that you do, because when that happens, what the result of that is the people that are like you, Greg, right? That probably exist in those companies are like, well, I'm not really going to do this because I'm not going to, you know, it's never going to go anywhere because no one's going to listen. No one's going to take it seriously, or I'm never going to get credit for doing it. So why bother? I'm just going to kind of hoard this information or keep it to myself. Right. So creating this culture of acting as if, right. And kind of pushing people to go where they want to go before they actually get it. When things like promotions happen, it's so obvious to everybody around because the results are already there that it just, there's no argument, right? Yeah. It makes, like, quite honestly, it makes my life so easy to say, well, we're obviously going to promote this person because of the following things. And there's so much more potential here through the enablement versus waiting for the enablement to get the action, right? So I would implore anybody who's still watching 15 minutes into the podcast that if you are a leader of anyone, right? And you don't have to be a leader of SEs or SAs, but enable your people to act as if, right? Like push them forward to allow them to have good ideas and try things out. And then, take what's good and apply it. And what's not good, tweak it, fix it, make it better. But you can never be, as a true leader, you can never be looking for all the credit for everything, looking to have your fingerprints all over everything. You got to enable your teams, right? And that may sound really obvious, but I've seen many examples in the world where it doesn't happen, and you don't get the results that we're talking about when you do that. So that'd be my little piece of advice to everybody out there, is just like enable your team, work for your team. Don't look at them as you work for them. Or, I'm sorry, they work for you. You want to look at it like you work for all of them, enabling, and then making sure you drive all the credit where the credit is due. And
well, it allows you to scale too, right?
That's right.
If you do something, know something, you keep it to yourself and keep it to the chest. Oh, I need to know this. I need to be the expert in this. No, then it's just you.
Well, I mean, I suffered from that for years when I was an individual contributor.
Job security.
Well, yeah. I mean, I was like, I'm pretty efficient, right? And I was efficient because I created frameworks for myself and repeatability. Like I bet you did the same thing in your lab, right? Like you kind of build it so you're like, everyone thinks you're doing this tremendous amount of work to show up to that meeting and have this impactful meeting. But the reality of it is, because you've done all this legwork up front, you've created these frameworks, you're not investing that much time for the individual moments, right? But I hoarded that information because I was like, this is my intellectual property. This is what separates me from everyone else. Sure. And this is going to catapult me into, where I wanted to go. And it did for a while. And then I got to the point where I hit this like brick wall where I was like, I'm going to continue doing the exact same thing for the rest of my life if I don't evolve and get what you said, which is scale, right? I need to go and create and share this information with other people and let go of the idea that it's intellectual property, because it's not, right? There's much more value in the intellectual property at scale than there is at the individual layer, is really what I'm saying.
So we've said that you've kind of organically gotten into that leader kind of position here. You do report to me. So we do have one-on-ones.
But you work for him.
Well, that's why I said report to. I didn't say how that works. But so a lot of times I talk to you and you're doing stuff with your kids, right? So we talk about how leadership is not just at work, right? So, we do move a mile a minute. We do move really fast. We're all really busy. How do you balance that? How do you balance, like, now that we're all home, how do you work through balancing like your family obligations and kind of lead, at home?
Yeah, it's definitely difficult for sure, especially being at home, right? There's no separation. We're going a mile a minute at CDI, and it's like, all right, work's over. Now slow down and go to your kids. No, you're still kind of in that, like, let's go. That's the one thing that I've learned with kids is that believe me, I'm not like, I don't do it well, but you got to be patient with kids. Like I have a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old, and they're just like, you expect them to just move at the pace we do, but they're children. Like, you got to just slow down and just let them, do their thing. Don't push them, too hard, and just kind of let them like do their thing. So it's I don't know. I got them into golf as well, which is really good too. So that kind of gives them, at least it slows them down a little bit. They're always on.
It's really a good excuse for you to get out there.
Oh, exactly. 1,000%. You guys want to what? Okay. Just drop it.
We're going out again.
Yeah. No, but it gives them,
get the reps in,
So they play basketball. They're huge basketball, like all season long. And
I was going to say, yeah.
But so that, it's constant movement. So I'm
I don't think I've ever played a game of basketball, so I'd be in a tough spot there too.
Well, Kyle and Spencer like to go back and forth on their basketball. So
I'm pretty sure Spencer's would smoke Kyle out in any form of basketball. just because for the record.
I probably agree.
Yeah. And just
because
I would like to see him dunk over the top of him.
Just because I like to pick on Diego. They're probably both better than Diego. So
I think on the work life balance thing, and I've talked about this like in our, internally in some of our bigger calls, and this is purely philosophical. This is my thing, right? This is not a hard and fast rule, but I believe strongly in work-life integration. So my kids know very much about CDI, right? And they know, dad's working on CDI, but it's part of our life, right? CDI is a means to an end for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
So they kind of have this
it is the provider.
Right. But they have this respect for the hard work and they see me, sitting in the office for hours at a time. I'm starting early. Some days I'm going late. But then the integration part is, and this is part of our culture, is if I need to dip out to go run them to something in, at the afternoon, I need to pick them up for school because my wife is busy, whatever it is. No one's looking at me going, did you punch out of the clock? Did you punch back in? How many hours? That doesn't happen, right? So I think chasing this idea of true separation between the two is a bit of a fool's errand. You're never really going to get there. And everyone who does, I'm sure there's some example of some person out there who's figured this out in some way and they have two cell phones and they never integrate the two things ever in their lives. But the people that I've seen that are really successful and seem to be really happy have integration, right? They don't have distinct, black and white separation between the two. And that's what I would, the advice I'd give everyone is stop chasing the separation and look, how do you integrate the two to find the balance, right?
Well, so let me ask you, I completely agree, first of all, that it is integration, not separation when it comes to that stuff. But
balance kind of implies separation, I think. And if you really want balance, you need to integrate, not separate.
Well, there should be boundaries, right? Let me ask you a question. So this is for both of you. We all three of us have kids. So, if you are at said basketball event or you're watching, Leo do BJJ or whatever, are you on your phone or are you engaged in that one activity?
You have to be engaged in whatever you're
present.
In my point, you're present. I think presence, right? But if there's something going on, and I know there's this potential for, something very important that could potentially interrupt that. Then I'm all right, I'm looking at the watch. If somebody calls me, I'm stepping out. I'm saying, hey, I'm at this thing. Can this wait, until this is over, and then I'll re-engage. And if not, on rare occasions, then it's I'm stepping out of this event, right? Depending on it all depends on the weight of the situation. How much weight, and again, this is the integration. How much weight is there on the personal event that I'm at versus the work event?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
if I'm at my son's graduation and it's a once in a lifetime thing, everything's waiting, right? Yeah. If I'm at, to your example, I'm at a martial arts class that I go to twice a week with him. Can I step out for 5 minutes and take a phone call? Absolutely, right? And that's the big difference that I think people need to really understand. It's you got to weigh out the things because you're integrated. That's how you get the balance. Right?
Do you do something similar, or does that look like?
Yeah, 100%. So when I said they play basketball year round, if any chance I get, bring us to IPA Bingo, we'll go play basketball. So while they're at practices, if a meeting comes up, phone call comes up, I step out and take it because they're just practicing. But at their games, there's no doubt I go on do not disturb because I'm videotaping every shot that they take because my oldest son shoots threes like it's his job. Steph Curry just did that to all his kids. He just destroys me. So I need to get all that on
highlight
tape.
reel.
Yeah, 100%. So absolutely. And I actually just read something somewhere that.
So he could be Kyle, is what you're saying.
I wouldn't doubt it. Yeah, he's really, really good.
On that
he's
game.
Hopefully,
really good.
Hopefully it's more expensive.
He's got an unbelievable hand. I've never seen a kid go through his leg behind his back.
Nice.
Just anybody. He's short, so maybe he might be a little torn, Kyle, but I don't know.
It wouldn't be that hard.
But the one thing I read something the other day, it says the only person or the only people that will remember you looking at your phone, checking emails on the weekends are your kids. They're the only ones that will remember that because if you're disconnected from them while they're doing something that's important to them, they're going to remember it.
Well, I have a few distinct roles. So we try to, and the pandemic was this, which I also call the apocalypse. This is probably the best thing that happened in the whole thing was I'm home for dinner. I was never home for dinner before.
Great point.
I was always running around. I was in the city. I was on an airplane. So now it's when we sit down to eat, whether we're at home or at a restaurant or whatever, it's no cell phones allowed.
Yes,
right?
I do the same thing.
And to the point where I've encouraged my children to chastise me and my wife if we do it. Yeah. And the only thing I'm allowed to do, because we have
play music.
Yeah, we have Sonos over the whole house, and I don't like sitting to dead silence. So I'll pull up my phone, and immediately my son's like, "Phone away," and I'm like, "Music,
Spotify."
That's okay. Then the phone goes back in the pocket, but because it's what are we talking about? At home, it's a 20-minute investment of time that we all engage and how was your day? And we all ask each other, how was your day? What did you do today? Like, what was good? What was bad? You know, was somebody mean to you? All right. I'm like, yes, my Colonno. Almost every time, which is weird, but that's what happens, right?
Never.
Do you have any guidelines, clear guidelines or distinctions for like kind of rules when you're with family versus not, or you're just like, oh, you know, my family, they're great, but we're so much better.
Too rigid either, right? Like you got to be a little bit.
Well, we're really rigid with phones and devices for our kids. Like they've never sat at a table and had a device in front of them, because I see families that do it, and it's just like how you can't even talk to your.
No, we don't. Like when we go out to restaurants, my kids aren't allowed to.
Yeah. We play.
We're gonna get some hate mail, but I agree.
No, I mean listen, I don't even want to go there because I've seen it, and it's just not what I want in my life.
It is. Because it's etiquette, right? It's etiquette.
As long as kids are quiet in a restaurant, I don't care what other people's kids are doing. I care what my kids are doing, and I don't want them running around, and I don't want them on iPads.
They put them on iPads and they blare these things in the middle of restaurants.
Well, that's
so
rude.
it's like,
I would probably respectfully ask them to turn it down if it was ruining my experience. I'd be like, can you just turn it down a little bit, or I'd ask the waitress, like, can you?
Yeah.
This is ridiculous.
I mean, I know we're at Wendy's, but no.
So how's this beer?
Yeah, I was actually going to say. So
what we got here? Zero gravity.
So we have Conehead IPA, Zero Gravity IPA. I will give credit. So Mr. John Wortell, one of our salespeople, was up in Vermont with his family, and he brought this down for me. I might actually like this more than last episode.
Really?
I know it's I know like I'm such a connoisseur now, but I like as weird as it is, I like the mouthfeel. Oh, yeah. I like the coating kind of like of your tongue. Like
I didn't
it's definitely got a heavy citra hop. It's very
I'm really I don't know why I'm digging it
forward. It's good.
I would give this an 8.3.
Ooh, all right.
I go a little lower. Yeah. Probably a 7.
Okay.
7. I'll go 7.
Well, you answer, and then I have a question.
I'm gonna go even lower than that. I'm gonna go 6.5.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. He's snooty.
Yeah. So what? It doesn't have to be IPA. What are your favorite beers at this
is a bad question to ask me.
We never get back to the
he's going to say like Miller High Life.
I can't drink either.
I like light beer.
God, Kyle converted.
No, I'm a natural light guy. For life.
Natty Lights.
Natty Lights. I love them. I keep a 30-pack in my house all the time. I drink probably 15 of them a week. Yeah.
Picture of your fridge. That's
how he's able to buy $3,000 suits.
Yeah, exactly. He's drinking. He's in college. How about you?
I'm not really a big at-home drinker at all. If we have guests over, stuff like that, I always break out. Jameson is probably one of my favorite whiskeys.
I saw you drinking when we were in the city the other day. You were drinking beers. Like what?
Yeah, I didn't love that though, because because I think Kyle ordered it for me, and it tasted like a big giant grapefruit that I was drinking. I was just like,
oh yeah, he was drinking a hazy IPA of some kind. I don't remember what it was. Okay, yeah, that's fine.
So, but if I do drink beer,
I like the brown liquor too.
Yeah, it's like a Boston.
And it's funny. We've had some internal conversations. A couple of people have said that they wanted to do some bourbon reviews on the show, and I was like, "Listen, I said it's bold statements from people that haven't been on the show yet." As nice as that is, I love a good whiskey bourbon type of thing as well. Maybe if we do like a little ounce for or something.
Well, it's the off-air. Off-air drinking that could be the problem.
So exactly to that point, so everybody knows. A lot of times we get here early, we start drinking a beverage before we actually get on camera. So that's where that stuff gets dangerous. I mean, some of the people, like probably Spencer, other people are doing shots, in the background. You don't know. So if there's any kind of audio issue, that's probably why. No, I'm just kidding.
Tech diffs.
Yeah, exactly.
So I never answered the drink that I can't drink anymore.
Well, you said tequila in college, and I just figured that was your answer, and I wasn't going to dig.
The most recent one, believe it or not.
I figured there's a police report. We probably almost didn't hire you, whatever it was. I don't know.
It's transfusions.
Oh. I know why.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know or not, but I love to play golf. And actually, Kyle introduced me to him. I took him to the course one day, and he ordered them. I used to drink virgins. I never.
Yeah, he's a bad influence.
Holy cow! So our club last year put in call them like a slushy machine. Right?
Oh,
so they had transfusions and they had pina coladas. And I was like, oh, let me try the transfusion. I kid you not, it tasted like a Slurpee from 7-Eleven.
It does, yeah.
I sucked these things down like it was my job. Even the guys I was playing with were like, how are you still standing? So it hit me out of nowhere. I think we were done playing. I was just sitting around talking to guys, and I was just like, I gotta go home.
Yeah.
And it was like, that's the end. So now I can't even look at them. I can't smell them.
Yeah.
Nothing. I used to love them.
That's how I am with high noons. I cannot drink high noons because I time travel every time I have them. And I wake up like a day later and I'm like, where am I? What happened? It's bad. So they're banned from my mouth.
Nice. So something we've talked about on the last few episodes is kind of a take home. You know, like is there something, a blog you read, a methodology you use, a book you like anything that you would say to our viewers in terms of how they could grow as a person, career-wise, anything, you know, something that you like?
I mean, there's so many books that I like, but career-wise, how to grow, I think it would go back to what we talked about before, is just don't be selfish, right? If you know something, you learn something, you think it's cool, you read something, you see something on Instagram, whatever it is, like just share it.
Yeah.
And don't be
nice.
It helps everybody. It helps you and it helps everybody around you, and just people will kind of look up to you for things like that. So
I like it. That's simple. So I haven't asked, like my co-host recently, but so is there anything, for you, same thing?
So I've gone to this place now where I'm trying to take the principles and ideas that we talk about on the show, and I haven't actually been on in a few episodes, but what I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to look for the examples of the things that I believe in fiction. Okay. So I'm reading a lot of kind of like fantasy novels, sci-fi, stuff like that. And what I'm trying to do is pull out the narrative of leadership or camaraderie or the
like the architect.
So I'm trying to take the principles and ideas, because there's only so many leadership books you can read, right? Like you go read them, they're all the same thing with different spin or different, semantics around the same concepts and ideas, right? And honestly, you stop absorbing after some period of time. You're just like, I'm reading another one of these books. Here they go.
And you can't put it to practice anymore.
No. So for me, what I'm now trying to do is kind of build my awareness muscle to the idea that, okay, if I'm going to read, like lately I've been reading a lot of Star Wars books, which, my son's
Wheel of Time before that.
Wheel of Time, Star Wars, the last First Law series. Like there's a whole bunch of these like long fantasy series that I've been into. But lately it's been Star Wars because my son's really into it and he like knows more of the Star Wars canon than I do. So what I'm doing is I'm looking for these tidbits inside the narrative of the story to say, oh, there it is, right? And how quickly can I pick those things out of the story? So
I like that.
It's like a whole different way of looking at it.
I like that ideology, and my recent favorite series was I just finished it. It was Gentlemen Bastards.
Oh, okay.
It's a very interesting series. It's about like basically almost like con men, but it's very interesting, as we get to this more nerd side apparently. But also, do you actually make it through Wheel of Time? Would you stop at? Because it's like 1,400 page book. So
yeah,
you went to 5, right?
I just finished book 6.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'm about 6,000 pages into 14,000 pages.
Yeah, a couple of the books in the middle, they're just so long. Especially when you talk about the ways and things like that.
A lot of filler. There's a lot of filler.
But yeah, awesome. Greg, I really appreciate you being on. Rob, thank you for coming once again.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
It's definitely been a pleasure. You can always come back.
Appreciate it.
But cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Thanks for joining us. And last thing is, we do enjoy your feedback. So SAs and IPAs at cdillc.com. Send us an email. And thanks again.
SAs and IPAs is a production of CDI Studios and is produced by Alyssa Hall and Spencer Grogan. To learn more about CDI, you can visit cdillc.com.